Today we're going to talk about the Synoptic Gospels, the life and teaching of Jesus. So before we jump into the Synoptic Gospels, I actually think it's important to discuss the Gospels as a whole. So what are the Gospels? They're the first 4 books of the New Testament, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they tell the story of Jesus' life, his ministry, his miracles, his death, and his resurrection. You might be wondering, why include 4 different versions of one story? Well, all 4 focus on the same person, but each present him from a different perspective for a different audience. And together they really give us a fuller picture of who Jesus is. And each gospel generally follows the same pattern. So first, we have Jesus' divine identity, then his teaching and his miracles, followed by his betrayal, trial, and death, and finally his resurrection and commissioning of followers. So we have 4 Gospels because Jesus' story is too big to be captured by just one account, and each adds depth and highlights something unique, helping us understand him more completely. So now that we have the Gospels at large covered, let's jump in and discuss the differences between the Synoptic Gospels versus the Gospel of John. So what are the Synoptic Gospels? Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are called Seen Together because they tell the story of Jesus from a similar perspective. They all begin with Jesus' humanity, whether it's his birth, his genealogy, or early ministry, and then they progress to show his teachings, his miracles, and works, and they gradually reveal his glory. So what these 3 Gospels accomplish is presenting the deity of Jesus from a below-upward model, which is first showing him as man, and then progressing to show us how he is God. As we look at the 3 pictures on the left-hand side, you'll see how each different book presents Jesus in a different way. So each gospel has a slightly different emphasis. Matthew presents Jesus as Israel's king, Mark as the model servant, and Luke as the perfect man. The thing that the synoptics are really just trying to tell us is from below upward. So this Jesus is God. The Synoptic Gospels present Jesus from a below upward model. Let's review how the Gospel of John differs. The Gospel of John differs because it actually presents Jesus from an above downward model. So Jesus is God in human flesh. So if we look at the beginning of the book of John, John 1:1 and 1:4, it actually begins at eternity past. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. So from the very start, John presents Jesus as fully God who took on human form. That as you're going through the book of John, you'll notice that every word and deed in this gospel shows his divine identity. John really emphasizes the incarnation and God's rescue of humanity. So this God became Jesus, while the synoptics start with the human Jesus and then reveal his glory. So John starts with the divine and shows how God himself came to dwell among us. So as we head into the last slide, I actually really enjoy this diagram because it shows how the Synoptic Gospels are the same as John, but also really focus on how they differ from one another. To begin at the middle, where it focuses on how the Synoptic Gospels and John are similar. So if we look, we can see that they each focus on the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And they also reveal Jesus' deity and glory. And then as we head into the different perspectives, I think it's important to note that each one is complementary, not contradictory. So the Synoptic Gospels don't contradict John, but rather they offer a different perspective. So as we look at the differences between the Synoptic Gospels and John, I really want to go point by point so that we can see how each compares. So in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they begin with Jesus' humanity, like his birth, genealogy, early ministry. So really from a young baby all the way up until his early ministry as a man. And then on John's side, it begins in eternity past. So we reviewed that scripture, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. So remember, we're starting as God. As we look at the next bullet point, it's the perspective. So Synoptic Gospels being from below upward versus John being from above downward. So below upward was man revealing himself to be God, and then God becoming man on the John side. And lastly, we see how the Synoptic Gospels show a gradual revelation of Jesus' deity through his teaching and miracles, versus John emphasizing Jesus is fully God from the start. So remember, these are meant to be complementary perspective, not contradictory. all reveal the life and teaching of Jesus.